I suspected my husband was cheating on me, but I was shocked when I found out everything at a family dinner. My seemingly perfect marriage took a dark turn when I found a stranger's earring in our bed. Convinced my husband was cheating, I uncovered secrets far worse than I first imagined, leading to a shocking revelation that turned my world upside down. Ryan and I had shared 4 beautiful years of marriage. From the very beginning, we had always made a promise to each other, to talk things through, to be open, and never to leave one another feeling ignored or dismissed. And for the most part, we held true to that promise. Ryan was thoughtful, funny, and always made sure I felt loved and supported. We did everything together, meals, chores, and even weekend video game sessions. Life felt simple, peaceful, and whole. That is, until one afternoon turned everything upside down. I was cleaning our bedroom, something I usually did every Saturday morning. The sun poured through the windows, the soft hum of music played in the background, and everything felt as routine as ever. I lifted the pillows from the bed to fluff them up and noticed something small and shiny tucked under one. Curious, I reached down and picked it up. It was an earring, a small silver stud with a tiny red gem. At first, I stared at it blankly, trying to understand where it had come from, but then a chill ran down my spine. My ears weren't pierced. I had never owned an earring in my life. My hands began to tremble as I turned the tiny piece of jewelry over in my palm, trying to make sense of it. There was only one explanation. That began to form in my mind, and I hated where it led. Had Ryan brought another woman into our bedroom? My chest tightened as my thoughts spiraled. I felt sick, betrayed, angry, hurt. The air around me felt heavier, like the walls of the room were closing in. I clutched the earring tightly in my hand and left the bedroom, my legs feeling like they were moving on their own. In the living room, I could hear the loud, chaotic sounds of Ryan's video game. Explosions, rapid gunfire, and the occasional whoop of celebration echoed through the hallway. As I entered, I saw him sitting comfortably on the couch, controller in hand, eyes locked on the TV screen. He was laughing to himself, completely unaware that our world might be shattering. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight in front of the television and stood there. "Kelly, sweetheart, you're blocking my game," Ryan said, slightly annoyed but still in his usual playful tone. "I can't see anything." I didn't move. My heart was pounding in my ears. I looked down at him, my jaw set tightly. "Don't you have something to tell me?" Ryan looked up, confused. His smile slowly faded. "What do you mean?" "I'm afraid I need more specifics." Without a word, I held up the earring, letting it dangle in front of him. "What is this doing in our bedroom?" His expression changed instantly. The color drained from his face. He stared at the earring like it was some alien object. I don't know. I've never seen it before." My heart sank further. "Really? That's the best you've got?" My voice was rising now, louder than I intended. "You're telling me this just magically appeared under our pillow?" "I swear, Kelly, I don't know where that came from," Ryan insisted, now standing up from the couch. He looked shaken, like he didn't know whether to defend himself or hug me. "You think I'm cheating on you?" "What am I supposed to think?" I snapped. "I don't wear earrings. I don't even own a pair. There is no reason for that to be in our bed unless someone else has been in it." He stepped closer and gently put his hands on my shoulders. His voice was steady but desperate. "I would never do that to you. Never. You know me better than that." I was still fuming, but something in his voice made me pause for just a second. He wasn't defensive or angry. He looked hurt. Then he said something that made me stop. "Maybe it's Jessica's. She stayed here when we were in Arizona last month, right?" I blinked. My sister, Jessica. That was true. While we were away, for a week visiting my parents, Jessica had stayed in our apartment to look after our cat, Milo. I remembered her texting me funny pictures of him sleeping in the sink and eating his food with one paw. But could this earring belong to her? Pray? "It's Jessica's," I muttered. I turned and walked quickly back to the bedroom to get my phone. My hands were still shaking as I dialed her number. She picked up almost immediately, her cheerful voice ringing out as if nothing in the world was wrong. "Hey, I was just about to call you," she said, light and casual. My heart was pounding hard in my chest. Her words caught me off guard. "Why? Did something happen?" I asked, feeling both nervous and oddly hopeful. "I've been missing an earring for days," she said, her tone still bright. "Did you guys find it by any chance? I think I might have left it at your place when I was watching Milo." My legs nearly gave out. I sank onto the edge of the bed, pressing my hand to my forehead. "Yes, that's why I called you," I breathed, barely able to keep the relief from flooding my voice. "Great. I thought I'd never find it," Jessica said with a laugh, clearly relieved herself. I forced a small laugh back, though mine came out more shaky than hers. I could feel the tension starting to unravel, even if my heart hadn't quite caught up. "What's going on?" she asked gently, clearly sensing something was off in my voice. Taking a deep breath, I confessed. "Can you imagine? I almost thought Ryan was cheating on me. I found the earring under our pillow and panicked," Jessica gasped. "Oh, Kelly, that's awful. I can't imagine how scared and confused you must have been. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to cause any of that." No. I'm just glad it turned out to be yours," I said, finally smiling, feeling a weight lift off my chest. "You can swing by in a few days to pick it up." "Perfect. Thanks for calling, Jessica replied before we ended the call. I walked back into the living room, where Ryan was still sitting on the couch, the controller resting in his lap now, and concern written on his face. He looked up as I entered. You were right, I said, smiling a little. The earring is Jessica's. He let out a soft breath and gave a small smile. See? I told you. Without hesitation, I sat beside him and wrapped my arms around him. I hugged him tightly, clinging to the relief and comfort of knowing I hadn't been betrayed. I'm sorry for accusing you, I said softly. It's okay, he replied, rubbing my back gently. I understand how it looked. You're not mad? I asked, searching his face. No, he said, planting a kiss on my forehead. Honestly, if I found something like that, I'd probably think the same. We sat there like that for a while, holding each other close. In that quiet moment, I told myself I would do better, trust more, doubt less. We had always talked things through, and I wanted to return to that place of trust again. I had let fear take over, and now that everything was clear, I wanted to believe in us again. But even as I made that promise to myself, something inside me didn't settle. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was just leftover worry from the scare. Yet, over the next few weeks, I couldn't ignore what was changing. Ryan started coming home later than usual. At first, it was just once or twice a week. He said he had meetings or got stuck in traffic. Then it became almost daily. He was always texting someone, sometimes smiling at his phone, sometimes quickly locking the screen when I walked in the room. If I asked, he'd tell me it was work, or an old friend, or someone from his fantasy football league. Every answer sounded reasonable. Every excuse could have been true, but somehow none of it felt right. Why don't you trust me? He asked one evening, his voice calm but hurt. I don't know, I answered honestly, torn inside. It's just a feeling I can't explain. I wanted to believe him. I truly did, but the uneasiness didn't go away. Then, one afternoon, my car wouldn't start. The battery had died and I had groceries to buy. Ryan offered to let me take his car. I hesitated, but I had no other option. I grabbed his keys and headed out. The errands were uneventful until I was almost home. My phone rang as I pulled up to a stoplight. I reached to grab it, but it had slipped under the seat. I leaned over, stretching my hand beneath it, hoping to grab it before the call ended. Instead of my phone, my fingers hit something else, a small box. Curious and slightly uneasy, I pulled it out. My heart instantly dropped. It was a pack of condoms. My stomach twisted as I stared at it. My thoughts raced. We hadn't used condoms in years. I knew the condoms weren't for us. I had been on the pill for years, and we hadn't used any in our marriage. There was no reason for them to be in Ryan's car, unless he was using them with someone else. My heart didn't even break this time. It simply hardened. The doubts, the late nights, the messages, the strange behavior. My instincts had been screaming at me, and now I had proof. Ryan was cheating on me. Fury and betrayal pulsed through my veins like poison. I gripped the pack of condoms tightly in my hands, my knuckles white. But instead of storming home and throwing accusations, I did something different. I wanted him to face consequences. Real ones. I wanted him to lose everything. With cold determination, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a decorative brooch I often wore. Using the sharp end, I carefully punctured the condoms in several places. I didn't know who he was using them with, and I didn't care. Let him figure it out the hard way. I didn't go home after that. I drove straight to my lawyer's office. I had met him a few years earlier through a friend when we were finalizing a property agreement. He was smart, thorough, and didn't waste time. Sitting across from him, I calmly explained what I had discovered. There were no tears, just facts. The look on his face changed from sympathy to focus. He knew exactly what I wanted and promised. To prepare divorce papers that would favor me as much as the law would allow. Oddly enough, I felt a sense of peace. A quiet stillness settled inside me, as if my mind had finally stopped screaming. For once, I was in control again. When I got home later that evening, I smiled as I walked through the door. Ryan was on the couch, playing video games. He greeted me with a cheerful, "Hey babe," and I returned it with a kiss on the cheek. He had no idea, not a single clue that I had already started pulling apart the life we had built together. For the next 3 months, I played the perfect role. I cooked his favorite meals, spaghetti carbonara, roast chicken, even his mom's meatloaf recipe. I laughed at his jokes, rubbed his shoulders after work, and never asked where he'd been. I nodded during his made-up stories about meetings, and when he smiled at texts, I smiled too. He thought everything was perfect. He thought I was just happy. He didn't realize I was documenting everything. Every lie, every late night, every excuse, I wrote it down. My lawyer had a detailed timeline, and slowly, we built a case that would leave Ryan with nothing he didn't deserve. Then came the day I had planned for. It was my mother's birthday. She had decided to host a family dinner in her backyard, inviting both sides of the family. Ryan's parents were coming, and so were mine. My sister Jessica would be there too. I hadn't fully forgiven her for the earring incident, even though she swore it was hers. A small part of me still suspected there was more between her and Ryan. I kept my distance. Our mother had been single for years. She and our father divorced when Jessica and I were still in high school, and Since then, she hadn't had a serious partner. That day, she seemed unusually cheerful, fluttering around the backyard like a young bride. Her smile was wider than I had seen in years. Ryan and his father took over the barbecue grill while the rest of us gathered around the picnic tables. I noticed my mother lingering near them, chatting and laughing more than usual. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she was just being friendly. But a strange thought crept into my head. Was she trying to flirt with Ryan's father? It seemed harmless, but the idea made me uncomfortable. Dinner was nearly ready when my mother stood up and raised a glass of orange juice. That alone caught my attention. She was a woman who loved her wine. Seeing her toast with juice instead of her usual Chardonnay was strange. She smiled brightly and clinked her glass with a fork. "I'm so glad you're all here today because I have wonderful news," she said, her voice full of joy. We all turned to look at her, surprised but curious. "I'm pregnant," she announced, her eyes gleaming with excitement. The backyard fell silent for a moment. Then gasps filled the air, followed by awkward laughter and hesitant congratulations. Ryan's parents seemed stunned. My aunts clapped politely. My mother looked so proud of herself, as if she'd just won the lottery. Jessica and I, however, remained seated, speechless. "Wait, what?" Jessica finally blurted. "You're 46. My mother laughed gently and shrugged. "Love knows no age," she said dreamily. But my eyes weren't on her anymore. They were fixed on Ryan, who stood frozen beside the grill, spatula in hand, face pale as a sheet. He wasn't smiling. His mouth was slightly open, his posture stiff. He looked like someone who had just seen a ghost. That's when I knew. Doubts began crawling through my mind like vines twisting through broken glass. Maybe I had been wrong this whole time. Maybe my mother hadn't been flirting with Ryan's father at all. No, something was off. The way Ryan had reacted, how pale and stiff he looked. The discomfort on his face wasn't from surprise. It was from fear. Fear of something being revealed. I turned to my mother, my voice trembling. "Who's the father?" She paused, her expression faltering for a second. Then, just as quickly, she smiled again. That too wide, glowing expression on her face. "That's not important. I'm just happy to have this baby, and that's all that matters." Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Her words felt rehearsed, hollow. But I wasn't backing down. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat louder than the last. "It's Ryan, isn't it?" I asked. Jessica, who had been silent beside me, jerked her head toward me, her face a mask of confusion and disbelief. "You mean your husband, Ryan?" I nodded, barely able to speak. "Yes." The words felt impossible to say, yet I had to. 3 months ago, I continued, I found condoms in Ryan's car. I knew they weren't for us. I've been on the pill for years. At the time, I thought maybe he was sleeping with Jessica. That earring I found in our bed, everything pointed to someone else. Jessica's mouth dropped open. "What are you talking about?" My mother stood frozen, her face turning a deep shade of red. "This is absurd," she stammered. "Why would you even think something like that?" I stared directly at her, tears beginning to sting my eyes. "Please, let's skip the drama. Just tell me the truth. Yes or no?" Her lips trembled. "I would never do that to you," she said, her voice rising with desperation. "I'm your mother." But I didn't look away. I could feel the weight of every moment of doubt, every suspicion, pressing down on me like a boulder. I spoke carefully. "I have divorce papers in my bag. They're ready to go. Once signed and filed, they'll transfer almost everything Ryan owns to me. But if you tell me the truth now, I might reconsider." "I'm telling you the truth!" my mother shouted, her hands shaking now, eyes wide with panic. "I'm not lying!" That was when Ryan finally stepped forward. His expression was blank, as if the life had drained completely from his body. "Yes," he said, his voice no louder than a whisper. "I cheated on you. With your mother." The room fell completely silent. It felt like the earth had stopped turning. My mother's head snapped toward him, her eyes filled with terror. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "Why would you say that? I can't let her take everything I have." Ryan snapped back, his voice full of panic. His mask of calm finally shattered. I took a slow breath. I'd suspected it. But hearing the truth spoken out loud felt like a knife in the chest. Still, I didn't let my voice shake. I reached into my bag and pulled out the stack of carefully prepared divorce papers. With steady hands, I placed them on the table in front of him. "Sign these," I said coldly, "and give them to my lawyer." Ryan looked at the papers, then at me, his eyes pleading. "So, you're not taking everything?" I met his gaze with the calm of a woman who had been broken and then rebuilt herself. "I said I might reconsider," I replied, slowly standing. "But now I've decided not to. This is exactly what both of you deserve." The silence shattered into chaos. My mother started yelling, her voice rising with hysteria, calling after me. Ryan cursed loudly, slamming his hand on the table. I ignored them both. I didn't want to hear excuses or apologies. I didn't want tears. I had already cried enough for both of us. I walked out the door into the evening air, taking in a deep breath as though I were tasting freedom for the first time. Jessica ran after me, calling my name. I stopped, turning slightly as she caught up. "You really thought it was me?" she asked, her voice soft, her eyes wide with sadness. "If it weren't for your earring, I might never have suspected him," I admitted, the sting of betrayal returning. I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. We stood there quietly for a moment. The noise from the house continued, shouting, footsteps, confusion, but it no longer mattered. Together we walked down the driveway and kept going, never once looking back. I didn't need to. The door had closed on that chapter, and the only thing ahead now was healing, and the life I would build on my own terms.